It all begins in a verdant landscape, with a walled city in the distance, seeming like a perfectly normal day. Somewhere in the forest, a goblin wipes the blood from his dagger. He is sitting in a wooden box, and around him, several men's bodies are scattered on the floor. Suddenly, he hears shouts coming from the entrance of a nearby mine, with someone telling a girl to shut up. The goblin turned toward the noise, observing the dark entrance to the mine. He seems to be thinking about what's happening in there. Then a mischievous smile forms on his face. Inside, a young woman is tied up with her hands raised, completely terrified. One of her kidnappers is looking at her identity card and reads the name aloud. Jang Hyeon, resident of an upscale neighborhood in Seoul. The men realize that the girl they captured comes from a very posh place. One of them approaches Hyeon, who is gagged, and asks if she has calmed down so they can talk. He tells her that given her situation, she will definitely need their help. To prove his point, he threatens her by showing her the bloody head of another man, warning that she will suffer the same fate as her boyfriend if she doesn't cooperate. Jang Hyeon is completely horrified by the scene. The shock is so great that she faints instantly. One of the men complains that she fainted again, and the other says that if they simply broke some of her teeth, she would stop being a bother. The third man gets angry, calling his colleague a psychopath and telling him not to ruin her face, since it had been a long time since they'd been with a pretty girl. He adds that she is probably the most beautiful one that has been summoned to that place lately, so they should be more careful. Next, he tells the others to wake up, as they cannot carry her unconscious to the base. With his back turned, he grumbles that the other two's behavior is so disgusting he can barely look at them. The other two are offended and ask what he said, questioning if he ate something spoiled. They call him a pig, ask if he's gone mad, and draw their swords ready for a fight. However, before the fight begins, something catches their attention. They turned around and were shocked to see the goblin standing right there in front of them. With a menacing grin, the goblin suggests that from that moment on they change the rules of the game. He then shouts and throws 2 daggers towards them. The daggers strike both men, and one of them is astonished by the accuracy of the throw. Even wounded, he shouts that the goblin is just a dwarf and orders them to kill him. The 3 kidnappers then charge together at the goblin, shouting for the wretched little creature to die. The goblin, unfazed, prepares his own blade for the confrontation. The man in front attacks with his sword, yelling for him to die quickly. He curses the goblin, calling him trash as he delivers the blow. But the goblin dodges the attack with impressive agility. In a swift and precise movement, he passes the man and strikes him. The man screams in pain and falls to his knees on the ground. The goblin then finishes the job, cutting him from behind. The last man in the group is paralyzed with fear, unable to believe they were defeated by such a creature. Jang Hyeon, who has already woken up, observes everything with tears in her eyes, equally shocked. The goblin turns to the survivor and taunts him, asking why he's standing still and telling him to continue the game. Completely terrified, the man begins to swing his sword wildly, yelling for the green monster to stay away from him. He desperately begs the goblin to go away. The goblin simply dodges the clumsy blows. And then he lands a powerful kick right in the man's face. The fight is completely one-sided, with the goblin dominating his opponents without any difficulty. The last captor is now lying on the ground, trembling with fear, while Hyeon watches everything unfold. He begins to plead, begging the goblin not to come closer and even offers food, reminding him that he saw him understand human speech before. He tries to flatter him, saying that perhaps they can talk and that the goblin seems friendly. But as the goblin raises his weapon for the final blow, the man shouts for him to wait and say what he wants. The goblin, however, shows no intention of stopping. And with a single blow, the last of the kidnappers is finally silenced. After the fight, the goblin catches his breath, thinking that the whole situation is complete madness. He hears a noise and turns around, surprised. It was Jang Hyeon, still tied up and trembling with fear. The goblin approaches her with the bloody dagger in his hand. With a swift movement, he cuts the ropes that bound her. Upon freeing her, he says he had forgotten she was still there. Jang Hyeon, now free, calls out to him in a trembling voice. With tears in her eyes, she surprises him with a question, "You're Korean, aren't you?" The goblin seems confused by the question and wonders if that's how he looks to her, and if he even seems human in her eyes. Crying, she explains that he speaks Korean, understood what an identity card was, and even saved her. He interrupts her abruptly, telling her to shut up and stating that he didn't save her. She begs him to explain what's happening, as she has no idea where she is or what's going on. Pointing to the bodies, he asks if she didn't hear what those men were saying before. He explains that just like her, they were living their normal lives until, out of nowhere, they were thrown into that cursed world, and that's when everything turned into hell. Hyeon becomes frustrated, complaining that he only repeats another world, and asks for an explanation she can actually understand. The goblin gives a sly smile as if he knew something. He tells her that by now she should be able to see. He asks if she isn't seeing this mission thing and what mission the system gave her, but Ha-yeon remains confused, not knowing what he's talking about. At that moment, her eyes widened in shock. Two screens from the system appear floating in front of her, leaving her completely astonished. The goblin laughed, saying he knew she could see that too, and explained that if she continued adapting and completing the missions, she would be able to survive and even earn rewards. He then turns to leave, telling her to turn around and fight a little. Desperate, Ha-yeon grabs his leg, begging him to wait and explain properly, as she still doesn't understand anything. The goblin loses patience and turns to her. He grabs her violently and she screams in pain and fear. In an instant, he presses the blade of his dagger against her neck. He yells at her to listen carefully, calling her an idiot, and says that he's the most dangerous thing in that place, so what more could she expect from him? He declares that from that point on, he will massacre every human he encounters, and that the only reason she is still alive is because he felt the will to let her live. In tears, she asks why, saying that he could very well help her. Her question echoes in the goblin's mind, triggering a painful memory. In a flashback, we see the goblin in his original human form, kneeling amidst a destroyed camp during a violent storm, lamenting that things shouldn't have ended this way. He is crying while holding the body of a woman named Sulgi in his arms. The woman is dying. At that moment, a figure in full armor approaches them in the rain. He raises his gaze, his eyes filled with anger and despair. The figure is a woman known as the Holy Sword. Her name is Ha-Yurai. He yells at Ha-Yurai, accusing her of promising to help them have a good life in that other world. Desperate, he asks why she didn't help them since she could have done so. Ha-Yurai coldly replies that she regrets what happened, but that he fulfilled his mission and his sacrifice was noble. However, she declares that, because he killed an ally, he will be executed as a traitor. He explodes in fury, shouting that it was her soldiers who killed Sulgi and that he only tried to stop them, but she ended up killing him, Sulgi, and the child they hadn't yet had. Ha-Yurai pierces him with her sword. As he falls, she simply tells him to shut up, calling him a traitor. His last thoughts are filled with confusion, unable to understand how a noble sacrifice turned him into a traitor. He realizes that it's all a big lie. With his last breath, he curses all disgusting humans. He desperately wants to tear them all apart with his bare hands, saying he would pay any price for it. Back in the present, the rage from that memory burns in the goblin's eyes as he stares at Ha-yeon. He tells her that since she was so eager to know why he went so far, he's finally going to tell her. And he shouts that it's because he completely hates and despises humans, but above all, because he himself is no longer human. He concludes by saying that now he is a greenskin. The scene cuts back to a flashback where Ha-Yurai, the sacred sword, speaks about their sacrifice being a great honor. But even so, she sentences him to death for turning against his companions, calling him a traitor. He tries to defend himself, shouting that it was her soldiers who took Sulgi's life and that he only tried to stop them, but she took Sulgi and his unborn child. Ha-Yurai simply silences him, repeating that he is a traitor before executing him. His vision inverts as he dies. The words sacrifice and traitor echo in his mind, showing how betrayed he felt. He realizes it was all a lie and curses those wretched humans. In his final moments, his desire for revenge is so strong that he would be willing to give up everything for the chance to get his revenge. His consciousness seems to dissolve into a dark liquid. Bubbles rise to the surface. Suddenly, he emerges from the water, screaming at the top of his lungs, now in a different body. Catching his breath, he wonders how he's still breathing. Disoriented, he calls out for Sulgi, searching for her. He then becomes aware of his new form and wonders where in the world he is. He realizes he is at the center of a large summoning circle. Still panicked, he can't understand what's happening to him. He stares at his green hands and their reflection, horrified by his goblin-like appearance. An imposing figure with an animal skull as a helmet approaches him, speaking in a strange language. He is terrified, not understanding anything that is happening. The creature introduces itself as Morkzul, a shaman of the warriors. Morkzul says that, like a newborn in the goblin tribe, he will give it a name. He declares his new name. From now on, it will be Gorals. He repeats the name Gorals and wonders what it means. Elsewhere, a female goblin named Mev inspects a human's body, noting that all the blows were to vital points, an unmistakable work of Gorals. Impressed by his ability to confront humans in that way, she declares him her man. Mev orders the other goblins to hold their positions. She announces to everyone that she is going to meet Gorals. Back at the mine, he hears a noise outside. He turns to Ha-yeon and tells her to leave before he changes his mind. Hesitantly, she asks if there's any chance of staying with him, promising to do exactly what he tells her to do. Gorals is incredulous, saying she's driving him crazy by wanting to be with a creature that just killed people in front of her, but she insists he's not a monster. She explains that those men promised to help her but betrayed her, killed her colleague, and tried to abuse her, and that Gorals was the one who saved her, questioning who the real monster is and who the human is in that situation. Desperate, she asks who else she can trust, stating that he is the only person she has. He reprimands her, calling her a naive and empty-headed girl. He says that's exactly why she ends up in situations like this, because she gives her trust to just anyone without thinking twice. He warns her that there is nothing in that place that deserves her trust. Calming down a bit, he says that thankfully she wasn't the first to be summoned and that there are several survivor camps for people like her. He assures that the people there will be, at the very least, less dangerous than he is. Then he hands her one of his daggers. She asks what it is, and he explains that when she tries to join a group, there will come a time when she will have to pay a price, either with her body or with the life of another person. He advises her to hide the dagger well and use it the next time she finds herself in a situation like today's, saying that even a few cuts on exposed skin can give her a fighting chance. He turns to leave, warning that this is all he has to say and that if she speaks to him again, he will kill her. As he walks away, she asks him to wait and at least tell her his name. He pauses for a moment. With a smile, he replies that his name is Gorals, the Great Vessel, or Gorals, the Battle Goblin, but that his human name was Kim T-sung. After she leaves, Gorals begins rummaging through a chest left behind by the men. Mev finally finds him and questions why he let a human woman escape, since he had said he would kill every human he encountered. Turning around, Gorals greets her, saying that she has finally arrived. Mev, a goblin archer from the Black Moon clan, complains that the human woman left with his dagger, even though she herself hadn't received one yet. Gorals replies that killing such a pathetic human wouldn't even provide experience, and that it would be more work than it's worth. Mev gets all excited, interpreting that Gorals only wants to kill strong humans, and hugs him from behind, saying that he is her man, much to Gorals' confusion, who wonders when he became a goblin's man. She then asks how terrifying the holy sword he mentioned earlier is, that he wants it dead so desperately. Gorals explains that it's not simply because of her strength that he wants her dead. With a look full of hatred, he says he wants the lives of those who stole his world. Mev is shocked to see the intensity of his anger. He continues, recalling that they took away the reason he continued fighting and the person he dedicated himself to protecting. And as if that wasn't enough, they also took his life. He says he doesn't know why, but now that he's been brought back looking like this, there's nothing holding him back anymore. He recalls the vow he made on his deathbed, that he would give absolutely anything to be able to tear them apart. Mev is visibly frightened by Gorals' thirst for revenge. With his eyes blazing red with rage, Gorals vows that, for everything they made him go through, he will pay it back, down to the last drop. In the middle of her speech, Mev suddenly stumbles and shouts. Gorals is taken by surprise by her fright. She says he scared her and that she gets afraid when he acts like that, and Gorals apologizes, saying his anger wasn't directed at her. He then instructs her to gather the others and collect anything that can be offered to the shaman, and Mev readily agrees, saying that she always listens to her man. Mev runs off shouting for the other greenskins to go to work. After a while, Gorals is standing on top of a cliff. He observes the landscape. He seems to be thinking about something. Meanwhile, Zheng Haiyun continues running through the forest, fleeing from that place. Gorals opens a system screen. The Whisper of the Moonlight mission requires him to hunt 30 humans, and he has already killed 29. The reward is evolution into Goblin Warrior. He reflects on his 29 deaths. He thinks that since evolving into a battle goblin, his movements have become sharper and more powerful, and that when he becomes a Goblin Warrior, combat will be even easier. Mev calls him, interrupting his thoughts. She informs him that she has gathered everything that was useful and asks what the next step is. Gorals explains that some humans escaped the ambush and that they will return with reinforcements soon. With a wicked grin, he declares that they will turn that place into their grave. The scene changes to later under a bright sun. Gorals and the other goblins are setting traps at the mine entrance. Mev finishes positioning a box. Gorals reprimands her, saying that he told her to handle it carefully, and she apologizes. One of the other goblins approaches and calls him Chief. He reports that they did exactly what the boss ordered. All the traps and obstacles are ready. Gorals says they did a good job, but that he's not their boss, only to be interrupted by a goblin who insists that he is indeed the boss. This goblin, who has scars on his face, declares that he saw Gorals fight against humans and recognizes him as his leader. He turns to the others and asks if they all don't feel the same way. Immediately, all the other goblins agree, accepting Gorals as their leader. Mev joins the chorus, saying that she accepts him too, but as her man. Suddenly, a lookout shouts that the humans are coming. Gorls prepares for battle and orders everyone else to hide as far away as possible. He turns to Mev and says he's going to need her help. Mev, excited, declares that she will rain arrows down on them for her man. With a confident smile, Gorls says it's time to start the party. Human reinforcements arrive, and one of them calls his superior, showing him the bodies and the pool of blood left behind. The chief, a large man with an axe, asks incredulously if the survivor is telling him that a single goblin caused all that damage. Irritated, he grabs the man by the collar, accusing him of playing a trick on him, but the survivor insists it's true and that he only doesn't believe him because he didn't see it with his own eyes. He describes, horrified, how the wretched little creature became as furious as a rabid badger and annihilated everyone. The boss is not convinced and calls him a pathetic imbecile. He punches the man, knocking him to the ground. He then orders one of his men, Zhangyi, to take a group and bring the goblin back alive, as he wants to see with his own eyes if the fool is telling the truth. Zhangyi relays the order to the others, and the group of men prepares to storm the mine and capture the goblin alive. However, as soon as Zhangyi gives the order to advance, an arrow strikes him squarely in the face. The men are caught off guard by the sudden attack coming from the forest. The boss yells, asking where the hell that came from. The survivor points towards the mine and shouts that there's a goblin there. It was Mev with her bow in hand. An arrow strikes the leg of another man who is about to attack. The boss becomes furious with his men's incompetence and kicks the injured man, calling him useless trash. Mev smiles, calling humans ignorant. She then runs back inside the mine. The boss, furious, yells at his men to stop standing around and go get the little shit, because he wants him alive. The group of humans then runs into the mine, chasing Mev. Mev runs through the dark tunnels, drawing them into the depths. She jumps over one of the traps they set. Gorls also runs through a parallel tunnel, keeping pace with the advance of the humans. The humans continue the chase, shouting to catch her quickly. Mev arrives and warns Gorls that the humans are invading, and he congratulates her on her good work, saying that they will escape through the other exit. She celebrates the success of the plan. As humans continue to move forward, they don't realize where they are being led. Further back, the chief realizes he was tricked by a simple goblin and is humiliated. He runs after his men to warn them. Suddenly, he steps on a wire, triggering a trap. He stops, confused by what just happened. He notices that Gorls has blocked the path with a pile of rubble, but scoffs at the attempt, thinking it wouldn't be a real obstacle. However, he admits that the goblin has a few tricks up his sleeve and is smarter than his own men. At that moment, something catches your attention. He approaches the barricade. He finds a wooden box labeled explosive gunpowder. The survivor from the first wave calls him, and the chief has a bad feeling. He desperately yells for everyone to get out of there. But it's too late. The gunpowder explodes. The explosion is so powerful that it completely consumes the boss. The shockwave spreads out of the mine. The survivor, who is furthest away, is thrown a considerable distance by the explosion. Lying on the ground, he curses Gorls. The mine roof begins to collapse, sealing the entrance. Mev, who is outside in a safe location, comments that it was quite an explosion. She sees Gorls covered in dust and asks if he's all right. Suddenly, an intense blue light envelops Gorls, and Mev screams his name, terrified. A system window appears, informing that the kill count has reached 30 out of 30 and the mission is complete. As a reward, he will evolve into a goblin warrior. The light dissipates, revealing Gorls in his new form, now a goblin warrior. A satisfied smile forms on Gorls' face. Gorls feels a surge of power coursing through his body, a sensation he's never experienced before, and wonders if this is what it feels like to get stronger. Meanwhile, the survivor of the explosion tends to his injured leg. He grumbles to himself, saying that he warned them he wasn't an ordinary goblin but nobody listened, and that now those idiots got what they deserved. Suddenly he turns around, surprised, unable to believe that anyone survived that explosion. Gorls, now much more imposing, appears before him, calling him a cockroach. He draws his dagger. The man screams in pain as Gorls attacks him. Gorls immobilizes him and presses the dagger against his neck. He threatens him, saying that if he wants to stay alive, he'd better answer all his questions honestly, or else he'll become dinner that night. Elsewhere, a white-haired man observes a camp with a flag bearing the symbol of a sword. He is in a watchtower, and the sight of the survivors' camp brings back many memories for the summoned. He reflects that whether it was 10 years ago or now, the place remains exactly the same. Far away, Gorls and Mev are analyzing a map. Mev asks what happened, and he replies that the situation actually favors them. He tells the other goblins that he first needs to return to Lord Morksul and report what they have accomplished. After that, they will rearm their men and return to the attack. The survivor, who is now their prisoner, asks if Gorls can release him yet. He reminds Gorls that he marked the camp's location on the map and that they've already confirmed the place exists. Gorls, without much interest, says he will keep his promise and spare his life. The man is relieved and surprised. He stands up and tells the other goblins to get out of the way, saying that their leader let him go. He calls them pathetic rats as he walks away. However, as soon as he turns his back, the goblins attack him. They stab him from behind. They grab him and cover his mouth to muffle his screams. The group of goblins attacks him mercilessly. Gorls, still looking at the map, remarks that he said he would let him live, but never said his men felt the same way. The man's body is thrown into the water. In the Black Moon Clan cave, the shaman Morkzul asks Gorls if he is requesting weapons and troops to attack a human encampment. Kneeling, Gorls reports that he has already mapped their position, their number, and the geography of the place. He claims that with a surprise attack, they have a great chance of winning. Morkzul seems to be pondering the request. Suddenly, another voice echoes in the cave, telling Lord Morkzul not to approve the request. Gorls turns around to see who spoke. It is Goff, a hobgoblin of the Black Moon Clan, who argues that their focus should be on preparing for the approaching summons of the Great Chieftain. Goff explains that the call will lead them on a long march, and that they need to strengthen their troops and supplies immediately. Morkzul agrees that it's time to prepare, but says he has no real reason to deny Gorls' request. Goff retorts that Gorls is a rookie who has just evolved into a warrior, and that they cannot waste valuable resources and troops on someone like him. Gorls stands up and asks if his name is Goff, then invites him to join the mission and help protect these precious supplies and troops. He taunts him, saying if you really have the courage for that. Goff becomes furious and asks if Gorls is questioning his abilities. He accepts the challenge, saying he will prove his worth. At that moment, Mev, the shaman's granddaughter, runs in and asks for her husband, Gorls. Goff turns to Gorls and challenges him to a duel of honor. Mev is shocked by the twist. Gorls accepts the duel on one condition: the loser will submit completely to any order given by the winner. Mev is even more astonished. Morkzul authorizes the duel of honor between Goff and Gorls, leaving his granddaughter wondering why he would agree to something like that. The two are taken to an arena, surrounded by other goblins and hobgoblins. The crowd chants Goff's name. The goblin with scars on his face approaches Mev and asks why Chief Gorls is fighting Chief Goff, and why she didn't stop him. Mev nervously explains that there wasn't time to do anything, as Gorls accepted Goff's challenge before she could say anything. Morkzul announces the rules. He will be the witness to the duel of honor. Goff and Gorls will fight without weapons and without magic, and the duel will only end when one of them yields or no longer has the will to fight. The scarred goblin worries, reminding Mev that Goff has a terrible temper and won't let Gorls leave the arena unscathed. Morkzul then gives the signal for the duel to begin. Goff, with his imposing physique, roars and challenges Gorls to a fight. He continues on, mocking Gorls for thinking he's a big deal just because he evolved into a goblin warrior. He threatens to break Gorls' bones in such a way that he will never again. Before Goff could finish his sentence, Gorls moved. He delivers a precise kick right to the hobgoblin's groin. Goff falls to his knees, doubled over in pain. Without wasting any time, Gorls lands a powerful punch to Goff's face. The hobgoblin falls to the ground, defeated in just 2 blows. Mev and the other goblin are stunned by how quickly the fight unfolds. The crowd, which had previously been cheering for Goff, falls silent for a moment, but soon begins chanting that Goff will not surrender. Gorls approaches the fallen Goff and asks if he still has no intention of giving in. Seeing that Goff is still trying to resist, Gorls says that's enough and immobilizes him with an arm lock. He squeezes hard, making Goff scream in pain. Goff finally loses consciousness. The hobgoblin is completely knocked out. Gorls stands up and comments that Goff has an impressive physique, but his technique is rubbish. The crowd is now erupting in celebration of Gorls' victory, with Mev and the scarred goblin being the most excited. Morkzul rises and acknowledges Gorls as the victor, declaring that he will grant his request. Gorls thanks Lord Morkzul. Suddenly, he hears someone calling him. Mev and the other goblin run to embrace him, calling him boss. The goblin says Gorls was amazing and that he didn't think he would beat Goff, while Mev boasts, asking if her man isn't amazing. The scarred goblin declares that from that day forward he will be the chief's right-hand man, and Mev decides she will mate with Gorls before the day is over, leaving him embarrassed. Morkzul interrupts them, calling for Gorls. Gorls approaches respectfully. The shaman firmly plants his staff in the ground. A blue energy begins to emanate from the staff. Morkzul focuses his magic. Gorls is surprised to realize it's portal magic. Morkzul tells him to accompany him for a moment, as there is someone he needs to meet. Gorls agrees and crosses the portal along with the shaman. They arrive at a luxurious and opulent hall. The portal closes behind them. Gorls looks around, impressed by the place. In the center of the room, a new portal, this time yellow, opens above a table. A figure begins to emerge from the portal. Gorls remains on alert, watching the new arrival. A woman with dark skin and white hair appears, greeting old Morkzul and saying that it had been a long time. The scene begins with Morkzul striking his staff on the ground. A blue energy surges around the staff. Morkzul focuses his magic. Gorls is surprised to realize it's portal magic. Morkzul tells Gorls to come closer, as there is someone he needs to meet. Gorls obeys and follows the shaman through the portal, while Mev and another goblin watch from afar. They arrive at a luxurious and opulent hall. The portal closes behind them as soon as they pass through. Gorls takes a step forward, observing the unfamiliar surroundings. He walks beside Morkzul, still suspicious. He asks Lord Morkzul where they are. Morkzul ignores the question and simply calls him closer. Gorls obeys and approaches the shaman. Morkzul raises his finger, which glows with a blue light. He touches Gorls' forehead, telling him to lower his head. Gorls, without understanding, senses the magical energy. Morkzul then grants Gorls the authority to form an independent clan. He explains that Gorls possesses more than enough merit and ability, and that many already follow his leadership. He adds that the person Gorls is about to meet will help him. A yellow portal opens above a table in the center of the room. A figure begins to emerge from the portal. She is a woman with yellowish skin who introduces herself as Rumpelstiltskin, the Golden Goblin, and greets old Morkzul. Gorls is surprised, wondering what a Golden Goblin is. Rumpelstiltskin walks to a chair. She sits down and asks Gorls if he's the one who needs weapons. She says that everything has a price, and that she can't simply give them away for free. However, she says she would love to hear his story first, and invites him to sit down. Gorls pulls up a chair. He sits facing her. He agrees to tell his story and asks where he should begin. After recounting everything, he concludes by saying that this is how he was reborn as a goblin, and that, believe it or not, this is the whole story. Rumpelstiltskin remains silent for a moment, absorbing the information. Suddenly, she slams her hand on the table, exclaiming that the story is brilliant. She declares it was the funniest story she's ever heard. With a snap of her fingers, she shows her approval. Several books and scrolls float around her. She says his story will be the most valuable piece in her entire collection. She seems extremely pleased. She leans over the table and shouts that she loved the story. Excited, she celebrates, saying it had been a long time since someone had made her so excited. Gorls, on the other hand, is disturbed, wondering what part of his tragic past that crazy woman could have enjoyed, and the thought makes him want to kill her. He interrupts her and asks if he can now get the weapons. She seems surprised, as if she had forgotten, and then agrees, saying that of course he can't fight without weapons. She gets up and approaches him. She says that's not all and that she's going to give him a special gift, calling it my great receptacle. She invites him to follow her. She opens another portal and says she's going to show you. Elsewhere, Rumpelstiltskin is reading a book that tells the story of Tiseong, who was killed by the blade of a human he trusted, and she comments that it's a tragedy she loves to hear about. Back in the present, Gorls follows her. Upon passing through the portal, he finds himself equipped with full armor, now holding the title of Master of the Gorls clan. Rumpelstiltskin praises him, saying that now he truly looks like a clan master, and asks if everything is ready. Gorls, wearing his new armor, agrees and says they are ready to leave, feeling a much greater power within himself. Suddenly, Rumpelstiltskin strikes a pose. She calls over 2 other golden goblins and boasts, saying that her intuition never fails her. She then tells Gorls to pay close attention, as she will explain the gifts she has given him. Gorls listens attentively. The scene changes to the Summon One's camp. Gorls, already outside the gate, observes the camp from atop a hill. His small army of goblins calls to him, ready for battle. He unsheathes his new sword. He gives the order to advance, declaring that it is hunting time. The goblin army advances towards the camp, shouting. The camp flag flutters in the wind. One of the camp guards runs to raise the alarm. He warns his squad leader that they are under attack, and the leader asks if it's the assassins. The guard, panting, corrects him and says they are goblins. The squad leader is shocked and confused. The goblins invade the camp and the battle begins. Back in his hall, Rumpelstiltskin observes the battle and announces the first gift. She explains that the death count of Gorls' clan members will be synchronized with his. Several Kill 1 notifications appear for Gorls. Rumpelstiltskin then announces the second gift. She snaps her fingers again. Several mission screens appear in front of Gorals. He is surprised to realize that she has invoked a mission window. She explains that he will now be able to open a mission window without any time or space restrictions. Gorals opens the window and sees a clan mission to hunt down 40 humans, with 25 already killed. He laughs, finding it surreal to do something he'd only read about in web novels. The battle continues, with the goblins gaining the upper hand over the unprepared humans. The goblins, now more organized and motivated, attack in groups. A human is struck with a club. The goblins surround their opponents, using their numerical superiority. A human head rolls across the camp floor. The squad leader yells at his men, asking if they're afraid of some insignificant goblins. He urges them to teach those scumbags a lesson and show them what happens when they dare to cross paths with humans. However, before he can finish his sentence, a sword pierces his chest. He falls dead. Gorals, who killed him, stares at him and asks who he's calling trash. The other humans are paralyzed with fear as they watch their leader fall. One of them can't believe that the squad leader was defeated by a goblin. He realizes that these are not the ordinary goblins they usually see and decides to run away. Panic spreads and everyone starts running and screaming to retreat. Humans flee in disarray, pursued by goblins. Gorals watches them run away and calls them idiots. His goblins approach, congratulating the chief on the magnificent battle and mocking the humans for fleeing. Gorals simply observes them, lost in thought. Rumpelstiltskin's voice echoes, asking if he has yet decided on a name for his clan. Gorals seems surprised by the question. He turns to his men and gives a speech, saying that they fought brilliantly. He declares that on that day, they were reborn as warriors rooted in the Black Moon clan. Mev gives a speech, saying that they who used to hide in the shadows and just run away. They achieved victory against humans. Gorals takes the floor and shouts that from now on they will achieve even more victories. Raising his sword, he shouts to the crowd of goblins. He declares the name of his new clan, the Blood Dagger clan. The scene shows the camp they just conquered. Back in Rumpelstiltskin's salon, she approves of the name, saying she likes Blood Dagger. She asks why he chose dagger and if there's a special reason. Gorals begins to explain that his first kill. The weapon he used for his first kill after becoming a goblin was a dagger. Rumpelstiltskin likes the answer and says he also likes that reasoning. Gorals, suspicious, asks why she is helping him so much and what she gets out of it. She asks if he knows what golden goblins are crazy about, besides glittering treasures and secrets. She throws herself into an armchair. With a smile, she replies, "A good story." She adds that she especially likes stories with a big impact. She explains that she felt a glimpse of intense anger and frustration while listening to his story. That's why she's very curious to see how this story ends. Gorals thanks them for their help, saying that thanks to it, things will be much easier. Rumpelstiltskin laughs and says that when his story is complete, it will earn him enough to cover 3 years' worth of drinking, and Gorals realizes she's selling her story. She bids him farewell, wishing him a good hunt. The scene changes to the outpost of the 13th Guard Detachment. A notice posted on the wall warns of frequent attacks by goblin gangs, ordering all detachments to increase their vigilance. A man complains that the others are acting like idiots and that the situation makes no sense. Sergeant Lee Sangjun asks if they should really be trembling with fear because of some goblins. One of his subordinates informs him that rumors say they are not ordinary goblins, and that they move in packs and attack like ghosts. Sangjun angrily crumples a piece of paper. He throws the paper at his subordinate and calls him an idiot, saying it's obvious that goblins move in packs. The subordinate insists the situation is serious, as more than half of the summoned camp has been decimated, but Sangjun retorts that this only happened because they were pathetic. He decides this is his chance to move up in life. The subordinate, worried, asks what he plans to do. Sangjun stares at the crumpled paper on the floor. He declares that they themselves will capture those goblins. Meanwhile, in a dark cell, a plate of disgusting food is left on the floor. Jang Hyeon is huddled in a corner of the cell. A man appears at the fence and asks why she didn't touch the food again. She accuses him of drugging the food again and calls them disgusting. The man provokes her, asking where she inherited that foul mouth from. He himself answers, saying that it must have been from her mother. The provocation works, and Hyeon gets up and goes to the railings, but the man calls her a bitch. He threatens her, saying that just because they treated her well, it doesn't mean she's anything special, and that out there, someone like her is absolutely nothing. He complains that he just wanted to have a little fun, and she pulled a knife on him. He gives up arguing and says so be it. He warns her that from now on he will teach her what her true worth is. He calls a guard and orders them to tie Hyeon up and throw her outside as soon as the goblin hunter arrives. The guard approaches the cell and tells her that she will be used as goblin bait, and that she is completely screwed. Later that night, Hayon is tied to a stake in the middle of the forest. A trail of gold coins was left on the ground, leading to her. She is alone, waiting for whatever may come. Gorls and his clan approach, and one of the goblins complains of a strange smell, while another explains that it's tree sap meant to confuse their sense of smell. Hidden in the bushes, two men observe the scene. One asks if the trap will really attract goblins, and the other says it's an obvious trap, but the expert told them to make it that way. He then turns around and asks if it isn't true, Mr. Goblin Hunter. The Goblin Hunter, an older and more experienced man, tells everyone to stay alert, as they don't know when the goblins will appear. One of the men whispers to the other, questioning whether that old man is really a hunter. He continues to doubt whether the trap will actually work. The Goblin Hunter states that all necessary preparations are complete. He explains that the coins he scattered along the road will attract them there, proving that money really does solve everything. He adds that the necklace Hayon is wearing has an enchantment that attracts goblins, and that with a human woman alone in the middle of the forest, there's no way a goblin could simply walk right past. One of the men makes a tasteless joke, saying that goblins probably want to have some fun too, but his colleague tells him to shut up and stop watching so much hentai. Goblin Hunter joins the conversation and says that human women have much softer flesh. He emphasizes the word, making it clear that he was speaking literally. The two younger men are disgusted by the comment. 4 hours later, a goblin finds one of the gold coins. He gets excited when he sees gold coins being used by humans. The Goblin Hunter notices the approach and orders everyone to prepare. The goblins follow the trail of coins, commenting that the stupid humans drop them everywhere. Gorls, who is leading the group, suddenly stopped. He spots something ahead. It's Hayon tied and gagged to the stake, crying. Gorl sighs incredulous. He and his group approach her. Hayon's eyes fill with hope as she recognizes him. Gorls, completely out of patience, asks if being tied up is her hobby or something like that. Hayon continues to cry, relieved to see him there.